Millionaire cheated because he thought his pregnant wife was poor, but she was actually the real rich one. Scarlett Hayes believed she was marrying for love, never suspecting that her new husband, William Blackwood, saw her as nothing more than a sweet but financially unremarkable woman to adorn his arm. With the bustle of lavish parties, glittering penthouse soirees, and secret phone calls in the dead of night, their marriage soon began to unravel. Worse yet, Scarlett found out she was pregnant, a revelation that should have brought them closer but instead drove William further into his web of deception. Little did he know, the poor wife he scorned was actually the true heiress to a colossal fortune. And as he chased illusions of wealth elsewhere, she prepared to reveal a truth that would change everything. Scarlett Hayes was never one to flaunt her background. Born into the Hayes legacy, a multi-generational empire in luxury imports, she'd grown up in a world of gilded chandeliers and private tutors. Yet her parents, Jonathan and Clarissa Hayes, raised her with down-to-earth values. They encouraged her to see people for who they were, not for what they had. By her early 20s, she'd learned how to navigate two very different circles, the ultra-rich with their endless parties, and the everyday world where genuine relationships mattered far more than bank balances. That's why, when she met William Blackwood at a rooftop charity event, she introduced herself simply as Scarlett, no last name attached. William was instantly smitten. He exuded a certain charm that set him apart from the crowd, tall, with refined features and a flash of ambition in his eyes. He told her he was a self-made entrepreneur in real estate, on track to become a millionaire by his 30th birthday. Scarlett was intrigued. She found his confidence infectious. Their first date took place at a modest bistro in Soho. William's idea of something authentic after hearing that Scarlett liked cozy places. They talked for hours over lavender lattes, discussing everything from favorite museums to future goals. He told her about his plans to expand his property investments overseas. She shared her dreams of traveling the world without a predefined path. That evening, under the glow of street lamps, William pressed a soft kiss to her cheek and asked if he could see her again. Despite the glitzy circles that Scarlett could have chosen from, she was inexplicably drawn to William. She felt that he saw her as a person rather than a trust fund or a potential stepping stone. And William, for his part, was relieved that she never asked too many questions about his finances. Unbeknownst to him, she already knew more about wealth management and market trends than he did. She simply chose not to showcase her knowledge so soon. In just a few months, their dates morphed into a relationship. Weekend getaways to the countryside, late-night strolls by the Hudson, and stolen kisses in art galleries turned their romance into a fairy tale. But while Scarlett wanted genuine love, William grew more convinced she was a simple, ordinary girl with no special claims to wealth or power. His ambition spurred him to thoughts of a grander life, one that didn't necessarily include the poor girl he believed he had found. As their relationship flourished, Scarlett tried hard to keep her true status under wraps. After all, she wanted William to fall in love with her soul, not her staggering net worth. She paid for modest things in cash coffees, movie tickets, or small gifts for him, always careful never to reveal her family's Black Centurion card or the portfolio of assets under her name. Meanwhile, her father, Jonathan Hayes, found the entire situation both amusing and a little disconcerting. "Why not bring him around the house, Pumpkin?" Jonathan asked one evening as Scarlett visited the Hayes estate on the outskirts of Manhattan. "We'd love to meet the young man you speak so highly of." Scarlett hesitated. She looked around at the drawing room walls lined with centuries-old paintings, at the plush carpets and ornate furniture. "Dad, it's just, I don't want him to see all this yet. I want to be sure." Her mother, Clarissa, gently squeezed her hand. "Of course, darling, but be careful. Eventually, if you two get serious, he'll have to know the truth. And if his feelings change because of it, well, that might reveal he never loved the real you. Scarlett nodded, her heart fluttering with anxiety. She trusted her parents implicitly, but she also trusted her instincts. William seemed genuine, full of warmth and laughter, at least when he was with her. Perhaps the only real tension between them came when he would brag about his upcoming business deals making. It sounded as though he was climbing a social and financial ladder to impress her. Still, Scarlett remained cautious. She refrained from letting him see her brand new sports car, preferring instead to drive a practical sedan. She rarely spoke of her travels to five-star resorts or her cameo appearances at high society events. In turn, William seemed comfortable believing she had a modest background. He'd make little jokes, calling her his down-to-earth city girl, which Scarlett accepted with a slight smile. Yet, even as she admired William's ambition, there were moments when she caught a faint glimmer in his eyes, an unquenchable hunger for more wealth, more power, more prestige. He'd talk about scoring bigger deals and meeting the right people. She'd sense a flicker of dissatisfaction with his current life. But each time she questioned him, he would shrug it off or switch topics. Behind their tender kisses and whispered promises, small secrets tugged at the edges of their happiness. Scarlett wondered how he might react if he discovered the family empire she would one day inherit. She prayed he would value her for who she was, not for what her bank account represented. Little did she know, that question would soon define the fate of their entire relationship. 3 more months passed, and William proposed during a candlelit dinner at a chic private dining club. A single violin played softly in the background as he kneeled and presented a modest diamond ring, proclaiming his unwavering devotion. Scarlett, heart-soaring, said yes through tears of happiness, believing her search for authentic love had reached its pinnacle. In that moment, she chose not to doubt her plan of keeping her wealth a secret. News of their engagement spread rapidly among her close friends. Samantha Nguyen, Scarlett's best friend since prep school, was the first to call. "Girl, are you sure about this?" she asked, concern tinging her otherwise cheerful tone. "You haven't even told him about, well, everything. Are you planning to hide the Hayes empire forever?" Scarlett sighed, perched in her small loft apartment, the one she had rented to maintain her modest facade. "I'll tell him soon, Sam, I promise, but not yet. He proposed without knowing about my background, which is exactly what I wanted. Now I can be sure it's real." While Scarlett glowed with hope, William was already tallying new possibilities. Marriage, to him, meant an alliance that could either enrich him or weigh him down. He affectionately told Scarlett that her simple upbringing made him feel at ease. Yet in the same breath, he'd mention how one day we'll move to the best penthouse in Manhattan so he could network with top investors and politicians. At times, it seemed he was trying to transform her into something more glamorous than she claimed to be. He'd bring home glossy magazines about high fashion, urging her to trade her comfortable flats for designer stilettos. He insisted they attend black tie fundraisers, where he'd try to rub elbows with real estate moguls. Scarlett obliged, though she kept her head down, afraid that someone from her family circle might recognize her. A chance encounter could unravel her entire ruse. Friends from William's side noticed his social climbing, but they also saw how lovingly he treated Scarlett, at least for now. In public, he flaunted her as if she were a trophy, a gentle, lower-class bride he had rescued. He once made an offhand joke, "It's a good thing you're not expensive, darling. I can invest our money in more important things like building my empire." Scarlett's cheeks burned at the remark, but she brushed it aside, unwilling to start a fight. Day by day, the glitter of William's illusions coated their relationship, blinding Scarlett to the cracks forming beneath the surface. Little did they know, those cracks would soon widen into irreparable rifts, when the full truth, hers and his, came crashing down. After the engagement, William's behavior shifted in small but telling ways. Scarlett began to notice that he was frequently late coming home from his downtown office, citing urgent meetings. He acted secretive with his phone, tilting the screen away when she walked by. Sometimes he'd find receipts for upscale bars or exclusive clubs that he'd never mentioned. Though it stung her pride to suspect him, she tried to rationalize it. William was a real estate entrepreneur, after all, and forging new partnerships might require late-night dinners. But a nagging doubt grew. Scarlett's mother had once warned her, a man who constantly thirsts for status can easily be swayed by illusions of wealth. Yet Scarlett wanted to trust William, remembering the simpler days of their courtship when they were both seemingly free from pretenses. One evening, she decided to surprise him at the office with homemade cupcakes. Stepping off the elevator, she spotted him through the glass walls of the conference room, leaning in close to an impeccably dressed brunette. The woman's laughter ricocheted softly in the near-empty space. Scarlett felt a pang in her chest. She told herself not to jump to conclusions. The woman could be a client. She knocked gently on the door, stepping inside with a warm smile. William's eyes flicked from the woman back to Scarlett, a momentary flash of annoyance crossing his face. "Honey," he said, standing up awkwardly, "I didn't expect you." The brunette gave Scarlett a polite, measuring glance, then introduced herself as Fiona McAllister, a prospective investor. Scarlett's heart calmed a bit. "I brought cupcakes," she said, voice wavering slightly. "I thought you might be hungry." William forced a grin, quickly shutting his laptop. "That's so sweet of you," he said, though his voice held a tense edge. Fiona accepted a cupcake, remarking how lucky William was to have such a thoughtful fiancé. But the entire atmosphere felt strained. At one point, Scarlett noticed a sly grin passing between William and Fiona. It felt too familiar, like a secret code. After Fiona left, Scarlett tried to ask William about the meeting. He brushed it off. "She's just an investor wanting to collaborate. It's nothing serious. The deal could be big, but I don't want to jinx it." His dismissive tone settled into Scarlett's mind like a creeping fog. In that moment, she couldn't help but wonder if Fiona was more than a mere business contact. Still, she had no proof of anything beyond William's shifting demeanor. Yet the seeds of betrayal were planted, and soon they would sprout into a heartbreaking discovery that would test every ounce of Scarlett's love and resolve. Roughly a month before their scheduled wedding, Scarlett felt a wave of nausea one morning that she initially brushed off as pre-wedding jitters. But as days passed, the queasiness grew persistent, and she realized her sense of smell was suddenly heightened. Samantha joined her for a doctor's visit, and after a hushed discussion in a small examination room, the test results emerged positive. Scarlett was pregnant. For a moment, sheer joy spread through Scarlett's veins. She imagined telling William they were going to be parents, picturing his face lighting up, maybe even tears of happiness in his eyes. She spent the short subway ride home thinking up creative ways to surprise him, perhaps a tiny pair of baby shoes wrapped in a ribbon. But when she finally mustered the courage to share the news that evening, his reaction was far from the euphoria she'd envisioned. He stared at her with a mix of shock and something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Pregnant?" he repeated, setting down his phone. "That's really sudden. We haven't even established ourselves fully yet." Scarlett's heart sank. "But we love each other, right? This is our baby," she said, her own eyes brimming with emotion. William forced a smile. Of course, he replied, pulling her into a half-hearted hug. "I'm just worried about finances. We're not even fully married yet." His arms loosened quicker than Scarlett expected, as though the idea of fatherhood weighed heavier than she ever imagined. In the following days, A strange distance developed between them. Instead of attending prenatal checkups with her, William claimed to be buried in negotiations with overseas clients. Scarlett found herself alone, flipping through pregnancy books and making anxious calls to Samantha for emotional support. Gone were the carefree evenings of them curled up on the couch. Instead, William spent more time networking in fancy lounges, returning home late with excuses that left Scarlett feeling more lonely than ever. Her mind spun with questions. Was he overwhelmed? Was he rethinking their wedding? A darker thought lingered. Could there be someone else who offered him the wealth and sophistication he craved? Yet whenever she tried to bring up her fears, William dismissed them with a peck on the cheek and a quick change of topic. He assured her everything was fine, but the warmth in his voice was waning. Meanwhile, Scarlett's pregnancy advanced, quietly overshadowed by a growing suspicion that William's heart might already be wandering. Scarlett's heart pounded as she slipped into the back seat of her town car, contemplating her next move. Only an hour ago, she had experienced yet another tense conversation with William. He claimed he was exhausted from dealing with failing projects and needed space to think. She wondered if what he really needed was time with his investor friend, Fiona McAllister. The suspicion gnawed at her, especially now that she had discovered she was carrying his child. As the car pulled away from the curb, Scarlett sighed, brushing her hand over her still flat belly and worrying about the future of her unborn baby. She gazed out the window at the shifting Manhattan skyline, recalling how different her life had been before meeting William. Born into the Hayes family, a name synonymous with luxury imports, private jets, and philanthropic galas, Scarlett had never wanted for anything. Yet her parents, Jonathan and Clarissa Hayes, had raised her to be unassuming and humble. Instead of living in a permanent spotlight, they taught her to appreciate life's simple joys and see beyond appearances. Scarlett had naturally gravitated toward more low-key pursuits, from volunteering at local shelters to traveling incognito to small towns. Because of this, most people she encountered never suspected that her unassuming manner concealed access to a vast, multi-generational empire. When she met William, that undercover existence had seemed like a blessing, a chance to find someone who loved her for who she was, not for her net worth. Eager to test the purity of his affections, she introduced herself simply as Scarlett, never elaborating on her family name or the fortune that would one day become hers. At the time, William's eyes had sparkled with admiration at her perceived modesty, and he would joke that he was the one bringing wealth into the relationship. She recalled how that easy banter had made her feel safe, a welcome escape from the suitors who had previously tried to chase her family's name rather than her heart. Yet ever since the proposal, tiny cracks had formed in William's gentlemanly facade. The small jokes about her presumed lack of money turned into passing comments loaded with subtext. He would say, "When I've made my millions, we won't have to worry about scraping by," and flash a grin that always struck Scarlett as slightly patronizing. His unguarded remarks, implying that her background was somehow less, stung more deeply than he realized, especially because she had the power to surpass his every financial dream. The tug-of-war in her mind between telling him the truth and protecting her experiment in authentic love grew heavier each day. After a lengthy drive, she arrived at the Hayes estate, a majestic property secluded behind wrought iron gates and lined with old oaks that stretched toward a sprawling mansion. The estate's servants greeted her warmly, accustomed to Scarlett's preference for minimal fanfare. Her father, Jonathan, met her at the entrance hall, his brow furrowed with concern. She could tell he had sensed her turmoil from the moment she stepped out of the car. In the drawing room, she poured her heart out, voice trembling with emotion. She confessed her anxieties about William's distant behavior, her fears about Fiona's influence, and the secret of her pregnancy that only he and a few close friends knew. Jonathan listened patiently as Clarissa joined them, settling onto a cushioned settee beside her daughter. The opulent surroundings, marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and Renaissance paintings stood in stark contrast to Scarlett's emotional fragility. When she finished, an aching silence hung in the air. "Scarlett, you're part of the Hayes legacy," Jonathan finally said, his tone gentle but firm. "I respect your decision to hide your identity for the sake of true love, but you're carrying his child now. The stakes are no longer just about your heart. They involve the well-being of our future grandchild. If William is truly fixated on wealth, do you really think deception is the answer?" Clarissa placed a reassuring hand on Scarlett's knee. "We raised you to understand people for who they are. But love is a two-way street. It requires honesty, not just from the other person, but from you as well. If he continues to view you as a liability rather than a partner, do you think revealing our fortune will make him love you more, or will it merely fuel his ambition?" She paused, letting the question sink in. Sometimes the only way to see a man's true colors is to show him exactly what he stands to gain or lose. Scarlett felt tears prick her eyes. She wanted to believe that somewhere beneath William's ambition lay a genuine heart that had once whispered heartfelt vows of forever. Perhaps, if faced with the enormity of her inheritance, he would wake from his greed-driven haze and remember why he had knelt to propose in the first place. But she also recognized the risk. If William was as enamored with wealth as she suspected, revealing her hidden fortune might spark a renewed fervor in him, a passion for her money rather than for her soul. Still, the alternative, remaining silent while suspicion and resentment festered, seemed equally perilous. She swallowed hard and glanced from her father to her mother. "I need to think this through." "You're right. The baby changes everything. I'm not ready to let go of the dream that he might love me unconditionally. But maybe the only way to know for sure is to tear down the walls I've built." In that moment, the mansion's grandeur seemed to press in on her, as though reminding her of the colossal secret she harbored. Her parents exchanged a worried glance, but nodded in agreement. They would stand by her, however she chose to reveal her inheritance, if that was the path she decided upon. Thus, Scarlett left the drawing room with a tumult of emotions surging inside her, resolved that the time for half-truths was nearing an end, no matter the cost to her heart. With the wedding date creeping ever closer, a heaviness settled on Scarlett's heart. Little gestures she once found endearing in William's behavior now seemed tinged with calculation. He'd mention how some couples signed prenuptial agreements, even though she didn't have much to protect, then laugh it off as a casual remark. He'd idly talk about how property deals were drying up and how wealthy clients like Fiona McAllister were a lifeline to keep his ambitions afloat. One evening, Scarlett resolved to clear the air. She cooked William's favorite meal, her mother's recipe of roast lamb with rosemary, and set the table with soft candlelight. As he walked in, preoccupied with his phone, she approached him, hands trembling. "William, can we talk? There's something important you need to know before we get married," she began, her voice quavering. He glanced up with mild irritation, tucking his phone into his pocket. "Sure, but can it wait? I've got a big call from a potential investor in 20 minutes. The dismissal deflated her, and she lost her nerve. "Yes, we can talk later," she said, forcing a smile. He gave a quick peck on her cheek and hurried into the office, shutting the door behind him. Left alone, Scarlett sank into a chair, tears pricking her eyes. Maybe he was simply stressed, but she couldn't help feeling that she no longer occupied a cherished place in his priorities. Determined to confirm or dispel her worries, Scarlett decided to pay an unscheduled visit to William's office the next day, feigning a desire to finalize wedding details. Arriving around midday, she found the reception area oddly deserted. She made her way to William's corner office, hearing muffled laughter from within. Carefully pushing the door open a crack, she glimpsed him and Fiona McAllister standing close, exchanging a private conversation. Fiona's voice was low and intimate. "Let's not forget, darling, your fiancé isn't exactly bringing much money to the table. You deserve someone on your level, don't you think? Someone like me." William's grin was telling. "Oh, trust me, Fiona. I know what I'm doing. Once I secure my finances, I'll figure out the rest. The wedding is part of my short-term plan, but I have bigger ambitions." He lightly traced a hand along Fiona's arm, eliciting a flirtatious laugh. Scarlett's heart twisted, her breath catching in her throat. She tiptoed away before either of them noticed her. The seeds of suspicion had blossomed into a tangible betrayal. William was entertaining the idea of discarding her for someone wealthier, someone who could propel him to the elite status he craved. She realized with a shudder that everything she'd feared was about to crash down on them both. Numb with shock and heartbreak, Scarlett debated her next move. Confront William directly? Cancel the wedding? Reveal her wealth in a grand, dramatic showdown? Each possibility felt agonizing. She needed clarity, support someone outside her family who could offer insight. She found that in an unexpected ally, Richard Summers, an old friend from boarding school who had once dated her cousin. Richard worked in private wealth management and had mingled in William's professional circle. Scarlett reached out to Richard, asking if they could meet. They settled on a quiet cafe in Tribeca, far from the hustle of corporate lunch spots. As soon as Scarlett arrived, Richard stood to hug her, noticing her tense posture and tearful eyes. He listened attentively as she relayed everything: her hidden fortune, her pregnancy, and William's closeness with Fiona McAllister. "Scarlett," Richard began gently, "I've heard rumors about William's real estate business. He took on heavy loans to fund expansions that aren't panning out. He's in debt, and some say Fiona's capital is his only lifeline." He paused, letting this sink in. If he truly loves you, no financial hardship should drive him to betray you. But from what you've described, it sounds like he's more interested in chasing wealth than honoring his relationship with you. Scarlett swallowed hard. "So my instincts weren't wrong," she murmured, her voice shaky. "But I'm pregnant with his child, Richard. I can't just walk away without trying to fix things, or at least not without some plan." His gaze softened. "I understand, but you need to protect yourself emotionally and financially. And it might be time to let him see who you really are. If he's as shallow as we suspect, he'll see your wealth as a jackpot. But maybe, just maybe, it'll force him to confront what a hypocrite he's been. And if he still chooses Fiona, then at least you'll know he never loved you in the first place." They spent the next hour crafting a plan. Richard offered to dig deeper into William's financial dealings, seeing if any unscrupulous or illegal practices could be uncovered. Scarlett, in turn, would prepare to drop her facade, letting William see at least a glimpse of the Hayes empire. If it turned out that William was merely misguided by ambition, maybe his conscience could be salvaged. But if his duplicity ran deeper, Scarlett would have no choice but to protect herself and her unborn baby. Walking out of the cafe, Scarlett felt a mixture of fear and resolve. The conversation with Richard reminded her that she still had the power to decide her own fate. She refused to remain a pawn in William's twisted game. Now, she just had to gather the courage to make her move before walking down an aisle toward a lifetime of regret. Scarlett's opportunity to see William's betrayal in full came sooner than expected. 2 days after her meeting with Richard, she received a text from an unknown number. It read, "You deserve the truth. Come to the Crystal Lounge tonight at 9 p.m. Fiona McAllister." Her heart pounded. It had to be a trap, or, at best, a stunt orchestrated by Fiona's arrogance. Yet Scarlett's curiosity burned. She wanted to see if Fiona would confirm her affair with William or brag about their twisted plan. So she slipped into a simple black dress that evening, ignoring William's claims that he was working late, and went alone to the exclusive Crystal Lounge perched atop a luxury hotel. Soft lighting and floor-to-ceiling windows gave the place an ethereal glow. Scarlett's stomach knotted as she spotted Fiona seated in a private corner, her posture regal and her expression smug. Slowly, Scarlett approached, taking the seat across from her uninvited. "Thank you for coming," Fiona said, swirling a martini glass. She wore a glittering emerald necklace, an ostentatious display of wealth. "I thought it was time we talked, woman to woman." Scarlett kept her voice steady. "If you have something to say, then say it." A thin smile curled on Fiona's lips. "William and I have been connected for several months now. He's quite charming, isn't he? And ambitious. He craves a partner who matches his drive and, let's be frank, his financial expectations. That's why I'm stepping in. You, dear, can't offer him the life he truly wants." Scarlett resisted the urge to hurl her drink at Fiona. Instead, she pressed for details, suspecting that Fiona craved the spotlight. "So is that why you're telling me this? To brag that you two are an item?" Fiona shrugged. "Call it a courtesy. Once your wedding passes, William's finances could still crumble. Unless, of course, he ties himself to me. Our families share deep business ties, and I have the means to propel him into a global empire." She leaned forward, eyes glittering. "I'm giving you a chance to step aside gracefully. Let him go so he can secure his future, and you won't have to endure the humiliation of being an afterthought." A quiet fury welled up inside Scarlett. "You have no idea who you're talking to," she wanted to scream. Instead, she stood, maintaining her composure. "Thank you for the warning, Fiona, but don't mistake my silence for weakness." With that, she left Fiona at the table, her cheeks burning with anger, heartbreak, and a flicker of grim satisfaction. Now, Scarlett had absolute confirmation that William was cheating on her with Fiona. No more illusions. It was time to decide whether to fight for a man who was only using her, or to reveal her wealth and watch his reaction crumble. The next evening, Scarlett confronted William in their apartment, choosing a moment he couldn't evade. He had just returned from another business meeting, his tie askew and his face flushed as though he'd been drinking. She stood in the living room, arms crossed, ignoring the twisting in her stomach, both from nerves and her advancing pregnancy. "We need to talk now," she said, her tone brooking no argument. He glanced at her with mild surprise, but followed her to the sofa. "I went to see Fiona last night," Scarlett began, her eyes never leaving his. "She told me everything about your so-called arrangement, about how you plan to leave me once you secure your finances or once she invests enough." William's expression froze, shock and guilt flickering across his features. "Scarlett, wait, I can explain." She cut him off with a shaky breath. "You told her I was poor, that I wasn't giving you the kind of lifestyle you want. That's why you turned to her, isn't it? Because she's wealthy and can fund your ambitions." He opened and closed his mouth, as if grasping for excuses. Finally, he exhaled. "Look, I'm just in a tight financial spot. I never intended for this to stop." Scarlett's voice cracked as she fought tears. "I'm pregnant with your child, William. We're supposed to be getting married in 2 weeks. And you're telling me you never intended. What exactly? To love me faithfully? To build a real future with me?" She let out a hollow laugh. "I was going to tell you something important, something that could change all of this. But now I need to know, if I did have money, would that matter to you? Or are you only looking for the biggest bankroll?" Silence hung thick in the air. William's eyes darted as though he was calculating the best answer. Scarlett, don't be dramatic. This thing with Fiona is just business. You and I can still get married, have the baby, and you'll keep Fiona on the side for funding, she hissed, fury igniting in her chest. That's not a marriage. That's a transaction. Her voice trembled as she summoned every ounce of courage. I need you to choose, William. If you truly love me, then be with me and our child. Cut off all ties with Fiona. But if you only care about money, then go to her. Don't you dare marry me. William said nothing, face pale, eyes calculating. In that moment, Scarlett felt the heartbreak sink in. He was too busy weighing the monetary value of each choice to realize he was on the verge of losing the woman who had genuinely loved him. Little did he know that the wealth he craved was right before him, hidden behind Scarlett's unwavering loyalty that would soon vanish if he didn't prove himself worthy. With the wedding just days away, and William's silence a resounding answer to her ultimatum, Scarlett made the bold decision to unveil her true identity. She coordinated a private dinner at the Hayes family estate, a sprawling property that made even the most opulent mansions look modest by comparison. She invited William under the guise that they'd be discussing final wedding details with some of her family. On the appointed evening, he drove up the long, tree-lined driveway, mouth falling open at the sight of the imposing gates and meticulously landscaped grounds. Before he could knock, a uniformed butler opened the door, ushering him into a grand foyer with marble floors and a glittering chandelier. His eyes darted around in awe. He'd believed Scarlett was from a simple upbringing. Nothing could be further from the truth. Scarlett entered, dressed in a sleek, elegant gown, her demeanor calm though her heart hammered. Her parents, Jonathan and Clarissa, stood by her side. "William," she said softly, "allow me to introduce you to my family, the Hayes. This estate and much more belongs to them, and soon, in part, to me." His face blanched, voice sputtering. "What do you mean?" Jonathan stepped forward, offering a cordial handshake that felt more like a test. "We're very pleased to meet you at last," he said, his tone neutral. "We've heard a lot about you both from our daughter and from other sources. You see, Scarlett is actually an heiress to the Hayes fortune. Our business deals in global luxury imports. The family's net worth is substantial." William's eyes flicked to Scarlett, searching for any hint that this was a joke. "You never told me," he said, blinking rapidly. "All this time, you let me think you were poor." Scarlett finished, her voice trembling only slightly. "I wanted you to love me, not for my bank account." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. He stared at the lavish surroundings, the priceless paintings, the echo of wealth reverberating through every corridor. Suddenly, the surety with which he'd planned his future, gravitating toward Fiona's money, felt upended. Here was a fortune that dwarfed Fiona's assets, making Scarlett the far richer bride. "You lied to me," William finally said, trying to shift blame. "All this time, you let me think." Her eyes flashed. "And you cheated on me, because you thought I had nothing to offer but love." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "So tell me, William, do you love me enough to stay? Or are you too obsessed with the idea of wealth to see what you've already thrown away?" His face contorted, torn between greed and guilt. The living embodiment of the dream he'd chased was standing before him carrying his child, no less. Yet, in that moment, Scarlett knew the choice was his to make. Reveal his true intentions and either salvage their relationship or prove once and for all that her love was not the currency he valued. That night, as the dinner concluded in unbearable tension, William found himself pacing the tiled courtyard of the Hayes estate under the moonlight. Scarlett stood nearby, arms wrapped around herself more for emotional protection than warmth. Jonathan and Clarissa had retreated to another wing, giving them space to talk, though it was clear they watched from a distance. William's face was a storm of conflicting emotions. "Scarlett," he said hoarsely, "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I was just drowning in debt." And Fiona offered a way out. "I thought you wouldn't care. I thought you didn't have much to lose." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "So you allowed yourself to get involved with her, string me along, and plan our wedding as if I were just some placeholder?" He raked a hand through his hair. "You have to understand, my entire future in real estate was on the line. I never expected you to be. I mean, to be part of a family this wealthy." Scarlett's heart clenched. She heard the unspoken subtext. "If I had known, I wouldn't have gone behind your back." She took a step closer, forcing him to meet her gaze. "So if you'd known I was rich, you'd have chosen me wholeheartedly over Fiona. That's not exactly a glowing testament to your character, William. I wanted you to see me, not a checkbook." He swallowed hard, eyes darting between the ornate hedges and the distant lights of the mansion. "I do love you," he insisted, voice trembling, "but I also need financial security. Is that so terrible?" Her voice softened, tinged with heartbreak. "It's not terrible to want stability. It is terrible to lie and cheat for it, especially when the person you claim to love is carrying your child." They fell silent, the cicadas filling the night air with a mournful hum. William's shoulders sagged and tears blurred Scarlett's vision. She saw the regret in him, but also the lingering greed, the part that wouldn't quite release him from Fiona's grasp if Scarlett's wealth hadn't outmatched Fiona's. "Tell me," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "is there any chance you can let go of your obsession with money and truly be my husband? Or should we end this right now? Walk away before I make the mistake of marrying a man who values fortune over fidelity." He paused for a long moment, a battle waging behind his eyes. Then, with trembling words, he said, Yes, I can let it go. I choose you, Scarlett. I choose our baby. Please, give me another chance. I'll cut off all ties with Fiona. I swear. Just, please, don't leave me." Though relief coursed through her veins, it was tainted by distrust. She nodded slowly. "I'm not promising anything yet. I need time to believe you mean it. Prove yourself, William. Prove that I'm not just the bigger prize in your eyes." They returned to the mansion, stepping inside with no illusions left between them. Yet even as the door closed, Scarlett feared that no matter what he said, the scars of betrayal might prove impossible to erase. In the days leading up to the wedding, William made a show of cutting contact with Fiona McAllister. He blocked her number, ceased attending her exclusive investor gatherings, and even returned a large check she'd provided as a gift for future business. To Scarlett's guarded relief, he seemed sincere in his attempts to prove loyalty. He spent more time with her, accompanying her to prenatal appointments and making grand gestures of affection, flowers, candlelit dinners, sweet text messages. But Scarlett couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She confided again in her ally, Richard Summers, who delivered a startling piece of news. Fiona was quietly speaking to the local press, hinting that she and William had parted ways under questionable circumstances. Rumors swirled that William's real estate firm was still on shaky ground, and a scandal might break if further details emerged about his entanglements with Fiona. "Be vigilant," Richard warned. "Fiona might try to sabotage the wedding or tarnish both your reputations out of spite." Scarlett nodded, bracing herself. She had no illusions about Fiona's willingness to go quietly. Still, she pressed forward with the ceremony arrangements, determined not to let fear overshadow a potential fresh start. She reasoned that William's newfound devotion might be genuine, born from the realization that deception would cost him everything he'd ever wanted: a family, a stable future, and, yes, potentially a share in the Hayes inheritance. If that was enough to keep him faithful, she found herself grudgingly accepting it, though it left an ache in her chest. When the wedding day finally arrived, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation and caution. The ceremony was set in a glass, domed conservatory on the Hayes estate, surrounded by exotic flowers and a sprinkling of close friends and family. Newspapers and paparazzi had been kept at bay, but everyone knew a hint of sensational rumor clung to the event. Scarlett, dressed in an ivory gown, simple yet elegant, her baby bump just beginning to show beneath the tailored fabric. Looking in the mirror, she whispered to herself, "Please, let this be right. Please let him be telling the truth." She kept a small silver locket pinned inside her dress, containing an ultrasound photo of her unborn child, a reminder that she wasn't just fighting for her own heart, but for her baby's future as well. Meanwhile, William waited near the altar, fidgeting with his cufflinks. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a figure lurking among the guests, a woman dressed in discreet black, Fiona. She wore a smug smile, whispering to someone who looked suspiciously like a reporter. His breath caught in his throat. Was she here to create a scene, or simply to watch him swear vows of fidelity he had once broken? As the music swelled and Scarlett began her walk down the aisle, William forced himself to focus on her glowing face, remembering the love they once shared. But with Fiona's presence casting a shadow, the vows they were about to exchange held a precarious significance. Would their union be the grand redemption of a flawed man, or the final act of a still lingering betrayal? The ceremony began smoothly enough, Efficient guiding them through the traditional vows. Scarlett's parents looked on with cautious smiles, while Samantha dabbed tears from her eyes. William's family, few in number, also wore expressions of relief. This day was the culmination of months of drama. For a fleeting moment, everything felt almost perfect, as if love truly could conquer the shadows that had threatened their union. But just as the officiant asked if anyone objected to their marriage, Fiona McAllister stepped forward, lips curled in a venomous smirk. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The officiant faltered, uncertain how to proceed. "I have something to say," Fiona announced, her voice echoing in the glass dome. "William, you once told me that if it weren't for this little pregnant nobody, you'd be free to truly pursue your ambitions." She paused, letting her accusation hang. "So tell me, is she really the woman you love? Or are you just making do because you discovered she's actually far wealthier than I am?" A stunned silence gripped the guests. Scarlett's face went white, tears threatening to spill. She glanced at William, waiting for him to refute Fiona's words. But he just stood there, jaw clenched, struggling to form a response. Fiona pressed on, turning to the crowd. "He was prepared to leave her for me, but when he found out she had a bigger fortune, he changed his tune. Doesn't that tell you everything about his true loyalties?" Murmurs spread. The press in the back snapped photos, capturing every tremor of tension. Scarlett's father, Jonathan, started to stand, fury evident, but William raised his hand, stepping forward. "I made mistakes," he said, voice trembling with a mixture of shame and anger. "Yes, Fiona, I was tempted by your wealth. Yes, I was weak, but I realized too late that the woman standing beside me, Scarlett, is the only person who ever truly loved me." He turned to the crowd, ignoring Fiona's glare. Scarlett didn't just have money hidden away. She had trust, compassion, and sincerity, and I betrayed it. His eyes glistened as he met Scarlett's gaze. "But I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to her." Fiona rolled her eyes, stepping back, but the damage was done. Whispers of scandal and betrayal buzzed around them. Scarlett felt the officiant's gaze on her, silently asking if they should continue. Heart pounding, she weighed William's plea against the risk that his greed might resurface. Finally, with a shaky breath, she reached out and grasped his hands. In that electric moment, Scarlett decided to trust him, possibly for the last time. The officiant, cleared his throat, concluding the vows. They exchanged rings, sealed their union with a trembling kiss. Yet even as applause broke out, Scarlett couldn't rid herself of the sense that a steep price had been paid for this fragile happiness. The hush left by Fiona's accusations lingered, the question unspoken: was William truly redeemed, or merely performing penance, until temptation struck again? In the weeks following the tumultuous wedding, life settled into a cautious rhythm. Scarlett, now visibly pregnant, divided her time between prenatal checkups, overseeing certain philanthropic ventures for the Hayes family, and managing her new role as William's wife. The public scandal eventually quieted, overshadowed by more salacious stories in the tabloids. Fiona McAllister retreated from the limelight, though rumors suggested she was still nursing a grudge and seeking new investments elsewhere. William made good on his promises to prove himself. He curtailed lavish spending, dedicating himself to an honest rebuild of his real estate business, minus any shady deals or reliance on Fiona's capital. While it wasn't an immediate path to grandeur, it was a stable, transparent approach, one that Scarlett's father quietly respected. Jonathan even offered a discreet loan to help William restructure his debts on more favorable terms, provided William adhered to ethical practices. William accepted with humility, acknowledging that trust was earned, not demanded. Day by day, Scarlett observed small changes in William's behavior that gave her hope. He'd greet her with genuine warmth, place a hand on her baby bump to feel their child's gentle kicks, and volunteer to accompany her to every doctor's appointment. Where once he'd chased flashy deals, now he spent evenings researching sustainable real estate projects or learning about philanthropy from Scarlett. The transformation wasn't instant or perfect, but it felt real enough that she dared to believe in his sincerity. One crisp autumn afternoon, they stood in the Hayes estate garden, watching vibrant orange and red leaves drift from the trees. Scarlett rested against William's shoulder, feeling her child move within her. She took his hand and held it over her belly. He offered a soft smile, his gaze brimming with cautious wonder. "I'm sorry for everything I put you through," he murmured. "I'm still learning how to let go of that desperate need for more. But I want to be a better man for you and for our baby." Scarlett pressed her lips into a tender smile. "You already are," she said, her voice trembling with a blend of lingering pain and tentative joy. "We'll keep walking forward, step by step." No longer was she the unsuspecting young woman who had to hide her true wealth. No longer was he the callous social climber who preyed on illusions. Their life ahead would be built on open truths and second chances. Although doubt lingered in the corners of their minds, both recognized that love, when fought for earnestly, could transcend past betrayals. Together, they turned toward the horizon, ready to forge a future unburdened by secrets, forging a brand new beginning as a family. Thank you for following Scarlett and William's dramatic, winding journey, a tale of ambition, deception, and ultimate redemption. Their story reminds us that trust is fragile, easily broken when driven by greed or fear. Yet it also highlights how sincerity, honesty, and unconditional love can pave a path to forgiveness and hope. In confronting the reality of who they truly were, Scarlett, an heiress who longed to be valued for her character, and William, a man blinded by his quest for fortune, they discovered that genuine affection can still blossom amid the rubble of past mistakes. If you found their turbulent love saga compelling, please like this video, share it with friends who adore heart-wrenching dramas, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the depths of emotion and the resilience of the human heart. Your support helps bring these narratives to life, and we truly appreciate every moment you spend with us.